Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 2 of Over the Head podcast. I am Scott Ratliff here again with my co-host Kyle Hartzell. And Kyle, today we're going to cover PLL news that broke this week. We've got a new coach, and apparently we're doing GMs now for the Chaos. We're going to break down week 1 of college lacrosse, and we'll preview week 2. But first, Kyle, the nerds are mad at us. I don't know if you got different feedback. The thing that I heard the most coming out of episode 1 of Over the Head was we talked about Ivy League players that have been good in professional lacrosse, and we landed on Matt Gibson and Ben Reeves, ignoring that I think 3 of the top 5 players in the PLL top 50 currently are from Ivy League schools. Jeff Teat, number 1, Tom Schreiber, number 2, and Michael Sowers, number 4, I think. So maybe we acknowledge that, perhaps a miss on our end. Anything else that cleanup-wise, Kyle, that came out of week 1 that's worth going back over?
I mean, I mentioned Max Seaball, Rob Pennell, but yeah, I guess we missed a couple. I mean, Jeff Teats. I was more talking longevity. But obviously Jeff Teats probably there to stay. Gavin Adler there to stay. And then Zach Courier, obviously. But yeah, hey, we're not gonna be perfect on this thing, so just bear with us. Going into episode 2 here, but yeah, we'll clean it up as we go.
A lot of offended SAS engineers sitting at their desks listening to episode 1, wondering how we could possibly say Ivy League players aren't good in pro lacrosse. So anyway, we heard you. All right, we'll work on it, but my take still stands. I remain Team Brandau, so we'll move forward. So Kyle, I think is the PLL is learning. So the week 1 of college lacrosse, you would think like college lacrosse is going to be the lead. And of course, the week of the first games, PLL does what the NFL seems to do so well, which is drop a big news story right when like anything else could possibly take their attention. They announced that they have a new coach, Roy Colsey, for the Carolina Chaos, and they have a GM, Spencer Ford, who will be joining that staff. So not a lot of context. I've never had a GM in the PLL before. We both know Spencer. He was a GM in the MLL when that was a normal job that people had on those teams. What are your thoughts on that hiring? GM, what's going on?
The GM thing, I was kind of like, when I heard that, I was like, okay, so do other teams have GMs? So I don't know what they're going to do. If it's just like, is it optional? Maybe it's just optional, and I don't know where that pay is coming from, but it'd be interesting to hear more in depth on what that is. I'm sure they're going to shed more light on it because I had a lot of people texting in our friend groups like, wait, we got GMs now? So that's going to be a big thing, I think, moving forward. They need to clear that up because I don't. And maybe we're not. Me and you aren't playing, so and I'm not coaching anymore, so I'm not getting all the in-depth stuff. So they might have talked about it, but it sounded like some of the players were confused talking to someone this week. So
we'll talk about, because I think there's 2 different topics. There's Spencer Ford and Roy Colsey as a unit, and what does that mean for Carolina? We'll get to that. But as a fan, this is the confusing thing. Every now and then it seems like the PLL does, where they just announce something and there's no real context. Like I saw an article came out, I think the day before this was announced, where somebody at Inside Lacrosse said, hey, they're considering GMs, and then the next day, oh, we have a GM. And it sounds like the message is basically, we're giving teams the option now. The head coaches can either opt in to be head coach and GM, or they can hire a GM. We don't know. So, and I think this is the same as other pro sports. We don't know how much these coaches make exactly. We have probably, you and I have a ballpark idea. You obviously have experience as an assistant and understanding, but the way that I understand it is the coaches get like 30 or 40 grand as their base pay, something in that ballpark. And then there's like $3,000 bonus per win. Maybe it's more, maybe it's 5, maybe it's 2. I don't know, but it's some bonus per win. So, and then they have a budget to go hire 2 assistant coaches. So the questions that I would love to get answers on from the PLL is, where does Spencer Ford live in Coach Colsey's budget, or in the Carolina Chaos budget? Meaning, can he go still hire 2 assistant coaches? So will he have 2 assistant coaches and a GM, or will he have a GM and 1 assistant coach? Did the GM take 1 assistant coach's salary, or did he give up part of his salary to say, I don't want the responsibility of doing salary cap. I'm not a spreadsheets guy. bring in somebody else to do player personnel, which, by the way, like makes a lot of sense. I don't think that's a bad setup, but would love to just, I'd love to get answers to those questions. Like, how is this going to work, regardless of what is the comp information on these people? Like, what are their contracts? Just how's it going to work? Are they going to have an extra personnel than all the other teams, or is Spencer Ford going to also be the second assistant and running the box, which he did, by the way, for my team, the Atlanta Blaze in the MLL. He was an assistant coach and he was our GM, and Liam Banks was our head coach. And then we had one other assistant. So lots of unanswered questions there. Like, as I rattle those off, do you know? I mean, do you have answers to any of those?
No, I don't have any answers to any of them. I'm sure I don't really pay attention to the comment section. I'm sure they're getting berated in there. But yeah, I think they need to clarify that, because also some players want more money in playing. It's like, are we adding more money to a coaching staff when we could be giving that to the players? I don't know. And I don't know if it's, again, is it optional? Can you have a GM? Because they should align, right? It should be every team has a GM, or the optional thing's a little weird.
Okay, but let me devil's advocate that. Like, in the NFL, Bill Belichick's the coach and the GM, but most other teams have a GM. Like, to me, either can work. Like, there's certain coaches who probably want to do that and have that skill set, and there's others who don't. So I don't know that like it has to be uniform. I just want to know how it fits into, is it an equal opportunity league? And what do you think, Kyle? Do you think it's good, better? Like, do you think the chaos are set? Let's imagine that they get their normal 2 assistants. So Spencer Ford is a full-time, all he's doing is looking at player personnel, contracts, that sort of thing. Colsey fills out his staff with 2 assistants like all the other teams. And then every other coach gets to say, hey, you can cut, 15, 20% of your salary, your pay, and you can go hire a GM too if you want. Which do you think is a better setup for success?
I mean, I think coaching staffs focusing on coaching. Obviously, the coaching staff's going to have input on like players they like. GM's always obviously bouncing that off those guys. But Spencer Ford's a proven guy, right? He was the GM when I played for the Bayhawks early in my career and did a phenomenal job with that.
Big skinny jeans guy. Big skinny jeans guy.
Big skinny jeans guy. But no, I think it's good. It takes, some pressure off the coaching staff. I mean, I don't know what it's like for a head coach to be. I saw Brian deal with it a little bit. He handles it very well. Has done well in the draft. But yeah, I think it's once you have another body in there that's looking at talent and giving their 2 cents on it. I think it's actually a positive. But yeah, we just need to. We don't know what I don't know what's going on with like. Is it? Does every team have the option, but you don't want to do it? Is that GM a coach? Because they announced GM, it wasn't GM and coach. So
yeah,
it'll be interesting to see more information come out on that. I'm sure they're going to do that, but yeah, there's definitely some confusion in the PLL right now with that.
It's one of the criticisms the league gets, and I think sometimes it's fair, sometimes it's not. Where like they do this, where they'll announce something and then there's a little bit of a lack of context. And I've always had the point of view like, yeah, there isn't a ton of context here. It's a little confusing, but it's also, this isn't the NFL. Like, this is not a super established, long history, tons of money, league. So there has to be some grace for if they're going to innovate, they're going to have to change things. And there's got to be some level of that. I agree. I do think I think there's coaches that can do it. I think it's an advantageous setup. And I'm going to laugh here, Hartsey, because like, the amount of times I saw guys get their feelings hurt over like a contract that's $1,000 more or less. Like, it's not like you're negotiating a $2 million a year versus $10 million a year. Like, guys are like, coach comes in and says, I get $31K this season instead of $33K. This is fucking bullshit, and it's like, and then it can affect the player coach relationship. And it's yes, money is important, but I think it's just like, obviously your contract and that aspect of it speaks to your value. And I do think it's nice to have somebody else, Spencer Ford, who's calling and saying, hey, this isn't on Coach Colsey. This is where, this is how I'm making these decisions. This is how I value you and see you on our team. This is the offer. And then when you get in that locker, it's almost like you separate church and state. Like that's all handled over here with Spencer, and the lacrosse piece is the lacrosse piece. Again, I do think there's certain coaches, really good communicators, like that do that well, and that's not an issue. But if this is something that all teams can go to, like I don't see a ton of coaches raising their hands saying I'd give away some of my salary when we both know it's already hard enough to make a living off this. But as far as setting your team up for success, I like the move. I poke fun at Spencer Ford. I've been around him. You've been around him. He's one of the best at this. He's really been around pro lacrosse. He knows how to build rosters. He knows how to identify talent. I think he's a really good hire for that role. What do you think about Roy Colsey? So that was a surprise to me. I hadn't heard his name in the past being tossed around. I think we did some research. He's been coaching high school lacrosse, right? I know he's got 2 kids who I think just got to college somewhere, playing at a high level. There were other names. There was Tony Resch was thrown around. Anthony Kelly is a name that we've both heard out there for a few cycles. Thoughts on the hire? What do you think?
Yeah, I was actually shocked. I didn't even know he was in the running for it. Obviously, Hall of Fame lacrosse player just got inducted in the Pro Lacrosse Hall of Fame. No doubt as a player, he's one of the best ever played, but that always doesn't pan out as a coach. But when I heard Brody Merrill, Tony, you hear the names Brody Merrill, Tony Resch. Tony Resch has been, obviously played pro lacrosse, was very, very good, and his whole life's been consumed by pro lacrosse. He's one of the best coaches. You see what he's done with the Archers defensive unit over there. They're, probably, one of the favorites to come back and repeat. And I don't know. We don't know how the interviews went. They might have dropped out, took their names out of the hat. But yeah, if he was hired over those 2 names and Anthony Kelly, like that's shocking to me. But again,
with Tony Resch, you mentioned this, but obviously I had experience playing for him there in the Archers. Yep. He's a athletic director and a head coach at a high school outside of Philadelphia. He did miss a day or 2 of training camp every year, and I think he missed a game, 1 game a season or something, as his program went deep into the playoffs. And you have some guys that coach high school that can skip their high school game, but when you're the AD and that's your, you can't. So that one, I did hear his name as part of the interview process, but that one, unless something's changed, I think he was hesitant to commit to a head coaching role because of that. Like anybody that knows Tony Resch, like if he's going to do it, he's going to do it right. He's going to be all in. And he felt like it wasn't, it probably wouldn't be fair for him not being able to make it a priority. You mentioned Brody. He's obviously coached 6s with the Cannons last year, won the 6s championship. 3 young kids, right? I think that's got to weigh in the travel, right? And that those expectations. I look at where, again, I don't know a lot about Roy Colsey, but I do look at like it's his kids just got to college. Like this is a good kind of phase of life to be able to commit to going on tour for the summer. But you ain't coaching, bunch of high school kids, we got 2 kids on the team who score all the goals. Like it's going to be there's going to be an adjustment period figuring out how pro lacrosse works. What's the, obviously he's played it, but coaching it is different. I think it's going to be really interesting to see. My initial reaction is I think it's going to take him some time to kind of make that adjustment, figure out how to manage the pro personalities, all that stuff we talked a little bit about last week.
Yeah. And he was coaching, with the USA indoor team with Reggie Thorpe. So yeah, I don't know.
That
I'm
helps.
not going to sit. I'm not. Yeah, it does help. I'm not going to sit here and bash the guy. I hope he does a great job. But yeah, at the end of the day,
go ahead.
I don't
bash him.
I don't know much about his coaching. Again, he coaches high school. But again, like great lacrosse players are great minds, and again, not all of them pan out as coaches, but they saw something there, right? I mean, Seth Tierney and whoever is on that board to hire. Yep. You're going to ask the right questions and they're going to pick the right people. Not all the time, but yeah, we'll see, I guess, when they, and then free agency, they got a lot of free agents. Is that team going to stay together? Is he going to go after new players? It's going to be interesting to see how that develops.
Not a bad situation to come into though. If you had to pick one player in the league right now, you had to start from scratch as a coach. Blaze Reardon's got to be, if he's not number one or 2. I mean,
I'd say he's 1. I mean, Blaze Reardon is like, you could probably not coach and just be okay.
Yeah. And, not just what he does as a player, but as a leader. And I mean, so he's got that. He's got something to work with there.
Yeah.
But you mentioned free agents. So Zach Carey at the PLL came out with top 25 2025 PLL free agents list with some potential destinations for some of the big names who are up for free agency. Can you explain free agency? How does this work? Do the teams have a chance to sign them back first, or like what? Just set the table, and then, I know you have some thoughts on some of Zach Carey's potential fits and who some of the big names are that could be on the move. Let's get into that.
Yeah, free agency, like their contracts are up. So in March, these players that they listed are all out of their contracts. So their teams can re-sign them or they can shop free agency here. So if you look at this list, like there are a lot of guys on this list. The biggest thing I think, with pro sports, a lot of things that move free agency in the NFL, the NBA, is money, right? Money is a big driver to this. Like if their contracts are up, Jamar Chase wants to be the highest paid wide receiver, and it's, 20, 30, $40 million difference, and teams have to let them go, salary cap, all that stuff. That really doesn't exist. We do have a salary cap, but like players are not like, hey, I'm getting paid $50K. I want to go. I need 150. Like I don't. Maybe that does exist, but I don't think it does.
Yeah, and Kyle, do like these guys are not free agents right now. Like I see Miles Jones on this list. He's playing for the Atlas in sixes.
Yeah.
Their current teams have a chance to renegotiate their contract prior to the free agency date where they are
March
officially
2025.
free.
Yeah.
That's correct, right?
Yep.
So the money part of it on the line, though, you're not going to go necessarily make a ton more money by going to another team. But would you say that the driver decision maker is like putting themselves in position to have success, and that could translate to money in the form of sponsorships and things like that, which matters to some of these guys. To some of these guys, it's probably about winning and where they are in their career, or being around the people they want to be around. Like, what do you think are if it's not money, if you're not going to make $100K more, switching from the Atlas to the Water Dogs, what would be some of the drivers of that decision-making process for these players?
Yeah, I think, Trevor Baptiste at the top of the list, he's not leaving the Atlas. Like that's just not going to happen. They're not going to, if
sure.
I'm positive.
What are you going to do if he does leave?
I'll do an episode in my underwear. I don't know. We can do
No. Don't do that.
But like
you can pour one of those big truck beers on your head on air if he does leave. How about that?
I'll do that. Whole
right.
beer on my head.
Right.
No, but to your point, like, if you look at this list, like Trevor Baptiste, I don't see him leaving the Atlas. You'd have to be dumb to let him go. I mean, you let him go, you got LaSalle in free agency. There's not many face-off guys like you're trading for someone. He's the best in the league, right? He's the best in the league. He can score goals. He's one of the only face-off guys in the league that can actually play lacrosse, outside of like a Joe Nardella. Yeah. So, and then you go down this list, Danny Logan, like, he's probably one of the best short stick D middies in the league. I put him in the top 5. And one thing that surprised me on this list for number 2 is potential fits were the California Redwoods, Maryland Whipsnakes, New York Atlas. He played for Coach Tierney at Denver. So I'm shocked to see the Water Dogs not listed as a potential landing spot, just because Witcher and Scarpello are both free agents on this list too. So it's like, if, Coach Tierney, I think he'd be dumb not to go after one of his former players in Danny Logan. Danny Logan's a stud, right? He's very, very good. And then continue on the list. Yeah, go ahead.
I think if you look at the guys at the top of this list, most of them, not all of them, and let's get into some of the other ones that are different. Most of them, the betting money would be on them going back to their teams. The reason they're at the top of this list is they're stars. Danny Logan's won the D Midi of the Year award like every year for 5 years. I know that's not factually accurate, but it seemed like that. So like, again, what's the motivation to leave? You're in a place right now where you're having a ton of individual success. Certainly the Atlas as a team, crazy game, fall short, but they got to be feeling like, hey, we're knocking on the door of a championship. Like, I'd be very surprised to see free agents leave that team just given the year. So if you're looking for guys on the move, to me, you're looking for a guy like Rob, number 3. I don't know Rob's thinking, but he's probably got a year left. I mean, I've heard from him 2 straight years that I'm thinking about it. I'm not sure. Like, he's got to be thinking win now. And are the California Redwoods like a win now team right now? I don't think so. So he's probably more of an interesting one to move. And I think we could go through this list and identify a few more like that, where it's kind of clear to be like, okay, this isn't the right situation for them. So give me, as you scroll through it, give me 2 or 3 that you think could go somewhere else and where you think they will go.
I mean, Danny Logan, if you want to, the top guys, Danny Logan, I think, obviously guys are married to the locker room, their locker room. It's really tough to leave your team and go to another team. Again, the money factor doesn't really exist in this league. So you'd have to leave for other reasons, but Danny Logan, I read that he had a very good relationship with Coach Tierney, so that could be the only team I can see him going to on, like, I would even potential fit California Redwoods, no, Maryland Whipsnakes, no. Like, the only team he's going to is he's staying on the Atlas or he's going to the Water Dogs, in my opinion. But I would say Rob, like, I don't think he's going to leave. He's been there for a while, and again, 1 to 2 years, but to your point, like, he could maybe if he sees a team that potential we can win a championship here, I could see him leaving for that, but I don't think he's going anywhere. Jared Newman, I don't know who Roy Colsey knows, but if he has relationships with some of these players, I don't know that. Jared Newman's he's staying in the Chaos jersey, I think, from that. Matt Witcher, I could see leaving the Water Dogs.
He's a good player.
He's a great player, man. He's one of the best. Yep, I put him in the top 5 short stick D middies. I could see him going elsewhere. I think a lot of teams would want him in their jersey. He's a stud. He can run in between the lines. Great in transition. But again, a lot of these guys, you don't know if they're going to leave their teams. The Philadelphia Water Dogs heard some rumblings in their locker room. Bill Tierney, right? Shook guys the wrong way. So I don't know. That's all hearsay, but like, I think I would see Matt Witcher or Scarpello. I think one of those guys are not going to be in a Water Dogs jersey next year. I don't know which one, but I think one of them are 100%.
I mean, they go 1-8. I don't know what, So again,
a lot of 1-goal games.
Happens, I don't care how strong a culture a locker room is. Like, that sucks. Like, losing gets really old, and so that's you're likely going to see some level of shakeup there. I challenge you on Rob. I know you know him really well, and so you maybe have a better insight into his thinking. I definitely don't have that insight, but if I were him, I'd be looking somewhere else. Like, I'd be looking at the Chaos, saying, hey, is there a spot for me there at X? You've got Blaze in that defense. Like, is that a better situation to win next year? Obviously, they've had kind of playoff success. I know there's not a ton of, you could look at like the Denver Outlaws, although now with Pat Cavanaugh being added there, like I don't necessarily know, but I'd be frustrated just with the Redwoods, a little bit of a lack of direction as far as their roster build the last couple of years. So he's the one that I probably circle on this list. I don't see it. If I'm a close defenseman, I'm not leaving Blaze. Like, that's my best buddy. I'm following him around everywhere. And then I agree. I think you got to go, look at the Water Dogs D middies as being guys that could be on the move. But I just, Jules Henningberg is another one. The Chaos players are so up in the air because it'll depend a lot on Colsey and what does he sell them on his vision, and what does Spencer Ford think? Do they even offer them contracts? But Jules is a guy who's moved around a little bit, but I think he, put in the right system. He do so many different things well. He can play with both hands. He can play midfield. He can play attack. I think like if you are a team that feels like you're built to win right now, he's like one of the prized pieces, because I think you can almost look at a number of different holes that your team potentially has, and he can be the piece that fills that hole really well. And I think he's a pretty selfless personality as far as being willing to play a lot of those different roles. So he's somebody, like, I look at the Cannons, for example. Are you one first line midfield away if you've got, and I know that the lefty attack spot, obviously they have Will Manny in there now, and they've got Marcus, and they've got Asher, and they've got these downhill dodgy middies. Like, does he make sense as kind of a, another guy on the first line who you're getting the short pole because Campbell's drawing the long pole? Like, that's an interesting landing spot to me for him. But I just, when I go through this list, I think 80% of these guys end up back where they came from. I just don't know if there's enough pull for a lot of them to, to go somewhere else.
Yeah, and I think like Mike Chanenchuk's on this list. I mean, he's in 1 or 2 years retirement. I've talked to him about that. But he's on this list. He's not going. He's literally gonna. He's either
Every guy that
retiring
we say
or
1 or 2 years
Whipsnakes.
retirement has been saying that for 5 years. I don't
Yeah.
believe any of them. They're all full of shit. Like,
Yeah.
Marcus,
Well, I caught him. I caught him.
Marcus will finish the last game of the season in like 30 seconds after the game. He'll text me and be like, "Yeah, I think I got one more in me." I'm like, "Shut the fuck up, dude. You just lost the last game of the season. Like, why don't you just like take a nap and like go to a hike, and then let's talk about it like in a couple months and see if you still want to play."
Yeah.
Chanenchuk's the same way. You did that shit too. Like, it's
Yeah.
these guys. Why? You don't need to retire. Rob, Channy, Holman, like these guys we're talking about are all still playing really fucking good. Like, I don't, let's not retire them.
I caught Channy at a good moment. We were both landing at Minnesota airport, and there's like a hell of a day of travel, and getting an Uber is like, oh man, it was one of those. But yeah, he's still got years left in him, but he ain't going anywhere. He's going to be in a Whipsnakes jersey or he's retiring. Justin Anderson, right. He's staying. He's staying an outlaw. He's not going to play if he goes to the Archers. Carolina Chaos could be a landing spot for him. I don't think Miles Jones is going anywhere. Romar Dennis isn't going anywhere. Nakai Montgomery, I had that one written down. I think that's an interesting one. I got to play with him his rookie year. He was, playing some O mid, playing some D mid. Last year, it looked like he was strictly D mid. He's kind of like not found like a spot. He's kind of just like D midi, O midi. Like, what we gotta establish something there. He's an interesting one. I don't know if he's frustrated or not. But I could see him maybe going somewhere else. But I don't know where on that list on that. But
all right, well we'll track it. What do you think? You want to move on here and talk about week 1 of college lacrosse and look ahead to week 2 a little bit?
Yeah, let's do it.
So I've got a poem. Should we start there?
Yes,
I don't want. I'm setting a precedent. I don't know if I'm going to have a poem every week, but when you write poetry, it takes inspiration, right? They say, Leonard Cohen said, "In a life that's burning well, poetry is the ash." It's a result of the things that happen. So the Andy Towers thing, again, it inspired a poem. I had a similar moment on Saturday this week that the only way I could really truly let out my feelings about it was to put it into poetic form. So let me start. The poem is called 899. Saturday morning, I woke up early, like a kid on Christmas with my PJs on, lacrosse PJs. I ran to the kitchen, made my coffee, did my chores, blew the leaves off the lawn. I went to the store. It was Whole Foods, Kyle. Spent time with my wife. It's important, Kyle. Made a turkey sandwich on gluten-free bread. It's inflammatory, Kyle. Even put away the knife. I'm an adult after all, Kyle. All so I could be locked in for college lacrosse season to begin. The clock struck noon. It was finally time. Loyola versus Georgetown. Wait, that'll be 899. The Grinch of lacrosse. It's not a babbling brook. It's a stream with a paywall. I just wanted to look. $12.99 to watch Marquette score 1 goal, to watch the Dolphins get abused by the Cuse of old. This cannot be right. It can't be all there is. Where's Quint? Where's Kark? Where's Anish with a fix? Saturday evening, with no games left to rip. Let me redirect you. We'll need your card and your zip. The end.
Oh man, that was good. That was good. I don't know how you're gonna top that one. That was pretty good.
Thank you.
Yeah, the streaming is a nightmare. But go ahead.
It's a fucking nightmare. Like
nightmare.
I just like
I was like,
no, I don't
wife.
want to download Flow TV to watch the Big East because I just want to watch Loyola play Georgetown one time. They don't play any other Big East teams. Like I don't want to pay that shit. And none of the games like this weekend have good quality. You're basically like you're beholden to the ESPN schedule. This week they were all on ESPN Plus. I forgot. I don't know. I don't criticize people, but like the broadcasting's like a nightmare on a lot of them. Like The camera angles are so shitty. I forgot. I know this isn't like a news story. It's just been long enough since college lacrosse has passed, and this is where the PLL does spoil you. High production quality, A-team broadcast every game. You get on to watch. I'm super pumped. The High Point Navy game, and it's just like, there's like JV soccer practice happening in the background behind the field, and like the broadcasters are not super informed, and it's just it's really frustrating. It's hard to watch. It's supposed to be, again, the pinnacle of the sport. Like, I would rather sit down and watch a PLL Saturday than the bullshit that I just tried to watch this weekend.
Yeah, it's a nightmare. I mean, I think I was like yelling at I was talking to you about it, but like my wife, like I'm on my computer in my office trying to get on ESPN on my account, and then it's like, provide your TV provider. It's in her name. So I got to go get her email. I got to get her password, and like it wasn't working. We had to do some tracking down. Like, yeah, it was, I wish it lived on one thing, right? Lived on like you said, the PLL, like live in one spot. But yeah, when you got to go Google and you got to dive in where the hell to watch your team play, it's a nightmare. They need to fix that. One thing I will say,
who is they? Who's they? God
needs to figure it out. The lacrosse gods and the NCAA. I don't know. Somebody figure it out.
Yeah, like, you know what I mean though? Like it's unfortunately, like there isn't one like they doesn't exist. It's like every conference is doing their own fucking thing. Yeah, right. Can private equity buy college lacrosse?
But like, if you look at one thing, so the MCLA, we're not going to dive in the MCLA here, but like we have a YouTube channel, and then we have we just stream it, and you can watch it. There's announcers. They're not great, but you can watch the game.
The MCLA, that's the private schools in Baltimore.
Yes, it's the private schools in Baltimore. That's the MIAA.
Sorry. The MCLA, that's the club. That's the club. For everybody that doesn't know, Kyle coaches at University of Texas.
Hook 'em.
One of the top teams in the MCLA.
Hook 'em, baby.
Okay. So to your point,
YouTube channel, like just provide something for free. Cause like you said, like I'd like to watch every lacrosse game. You know, you got the ACC network, Big Ten network. Like it's just, everything's $10
not every
here.
Game. Not every game. You didn't want to watch Marquette, Michigan.
No, not every game.
Good Lord.
Yeah. You don't want like, pay for 10 different things. Like just have it. I'll pay $100 a year. Just put it on one thing, and then we all can watch it. Like just figure it out. So yeah.
So it's a challenge. It gets better, right? So we're being hard on them, but once we get into the season a little ways, ESPN does kind of have their game of the week, and you get the games on TV. You get Quint and Kark and Anish and Boyle, and like, Jules will be on games this year again. So it does improve as the season goes. I just forgot. I just forgot how shitty it is. I want to watch on my TV. I don't want to stream it on my fucking computer.
No. It's lagging. Like the player shoot the guy. You see the guy shoot it, and then like it just jumps to him celebrating. You didn't even see the goal. It's like, fuck.
So the quality of the streaming was on par with the quality of the games. Like let me just rip through some scores. Shout out Manhattan, 14-3. They kicked the shit out of Wagner. Duke drops 26 on Bellarmine. Rat was right about a bunch of players on Duke being excited to shoot the ball. Georgetown overcomes a slow start. Loyola can't win a face-off. Georgetown wins comfortably 13-6 in one of the more competitive games. Navy 14-10 over High Point. We talked about that one. Navy looked good. That's a good win. Syracuse 24-5. They pound Jacksonville. Rutgers wins a good early season win against a Lehigh team. Maryland, 12-7, but they had Richmond at 0 goals, like it late into the third, if not the early fourth quarter. Utah takes down Ohio State. Penn State, good win, good early season win over Colgate. I mentioned it, Michigan 14-1. I talked about Marquette is like, I think I was like, just watch out for Marquette. 1 goal for Marquette, which I think the positive if you're Marquette here is I think they've already matched the career total for their head coach Jake Richard in pro lacrosse with 1 goal, right?
Yeah, that's not good. That's not good starting out. 1 goal, that's tough. It's really tough.
That's not a great start for Marquette, but obviously it's early season. And then the game of the week, right? Hopkins beats Denver 13-10 in a competitive game there. So didn't touch on all of them, but what stood out to you, in those storylines from week 1?
I mean, I think what stood out to me, the shot there again, like there wasn't a ton of games that you're like, that you want to key in on, but like
Yep.
the Utes, right?
Yep.
Top 20 team going to Ohio. Luke McNamara, freshman, 5 goals. Like they shocked me in that one. I didn't think they were going to win that one. Myers is in a hot seat. I don't know what's going on at Ohio State, but like, their facilities, their stadium, maybe we have to ask Anthony Kelly about what's going on there, but like it looks like a good place to go play lacrosse. I don't understand what's going on there, but Utah is a very young program, or obviously they haven't been D1 for that long. But yeah, like Luke McNamara, freshman, dropping 5. Cody
Utah's
Hart,
good.
Utah's good. Cody Hart, who's been there, a mainstay, 4-1. Ryan Stein's 2-3. Like they came out like they've been playing. They just dominated. It was that was the shocker. That was definitely the shocker to me. Hopkins Denver. That game, Hopkins offense looks really good. The ball is just moving nonstop. Guys are cutting picks, timely picks. But a big hole for them this year, which is gonna be key or something to key in on, is their short stick D midi play and their LSM. They're sliding early, their short sticks. Sliding to poles, and a lot of Denver's goals, the first couple were just like early slides, slow recovery. So they definitely need to clean that up. But Hopkins, they look good coming out in Denver. That's not an easy place to play. DU, I don't think that loss indicates what they can be. I think they're going to be a really good team coming down the stretch.
That's a game that's just like two good teams playing in the beginning of the season. One of the teams is going to win. I think both of those teams look like they're going to be there at the end of the year. I totally agree with you on that. Not to go back, but what's crazy to me about Utah, and I'm going to do a bad job right now. I can't remember their coach's name, but he was at Robert Morris prior to going in and coaching the Utes, and his teams at Robert Morris were like this too. They'd score 20 goals. They'd have 12 different goal scorers any game. I think I think if you watch them, the kid Steins, I think is the kind of, he makes them go. Like that kid's a lacrosse player. He's excellent. And then they've got a lot of guys that can hurt you. Like that's a team that, I think we talked about it last week, but like who are the teams kind of outside of the top 10, top 15, top 20 that could make noise? Like that's a team that could make noise. Like if they're solid on defense and they're getting stops and they're getting saves, they're going to score goals. They run up and down the field. They've got a lot of guys that can put the ball in the net. I think they've got something really kind of building there. On Ohio State. So we touched on it, and they've had success, right? They went to a national championship game, back with Jake Withers and some of the big names, guys that were successful in pro lacrosse. They haven't been able to recapture that magic. I'm wait and see. It's overreaction week 1 often for us, right? We look at these scores and it's like, holy shit, Duke's going to put up 30 every week, and Ohio State sucks. And like, that might not be the case. So obviously they have time to kind of find their identity, but that's what stood out to me about that game is what is their identity? They don't seem to want to play fast, which when you think of like a Big Ten school and the access to recruits and athletes, that's a strange approach to me. What is their identity? That's my question for Buckeyes. Is your identity football school?
Yeah,
that might be.
Well, they're a football school. They just won a national championship.
Yeah, so that could be it. So what's your overreaction? What's your one big takeaway from week 1? What's the big overreaction here?
Oh man, I don't again like the matchups weren't I would say, a lot of people coming out of the gates like Duke. I think that could be an overreaction. They played Bellarmine. They always beat Bellarmine in the beginning of the year. I would just say Duke might be my overreaction coming out scoring. I mean, they put up 26 goals, but like that could be my overreaction. Again, when these teams start playing formidable opponents, like that's when we'll know where they stand. But Scott, to tell you the truth, man, there was no like giant. I think the only overreaction I had was Syracuse's 60-inch TV they had in the box. Did you see that? They had Gary Gate was like, look at the TV was so big. He's like looking at every corner of it, but like there's no iPad. They had a 90-inch TV on the sideline. I thought out of overreaction, we don't need a 90-inch TV on the sideline. We can't do it on the iPad. Like, what are we doing here? So that probably be my overreaction is Syracuse's 70-inch TV on the sideline in the box. That's a huge mess. So that'd be my
it was a lot of
overreaction.
sloppy play. across the board. Like Jacksonville did not look good, and
No.
you know, a lot of these teams didn't. Frankly, if I have one, I go back to Q's. Like this could be the Q's team for me that just that wins the national championship and like fully brings them back. Like I thought they were as advertised. I think they're good everywhere on the field, and I think their offense is just there's just so many weapons, so many different ways they can beat you. That would be my week one overreaction is go ahead and give them the trophy and just call it a season.
I think last week I said Duke was like going to get knocked out of the top 20, but when I watched them play, I mean, the transfer from Maryland, Eric Maliver, he had 4 goals, 2 assists.
Yeah, Maliver, Eric Maliver.
Maliver, what did I say, Maliver? Duke, their first line midfield is going to be an absolute problem. McAdory, obviously attackman midfielder. He had 3 assists. He didn't take a shot the entire game. He was just like drawing slides and dishing. He had one. He like dodged down the alley. Slide came. He threw it all the way through the defense and hit Ben Johnson. I mean, that first line midfield is going to be a problem. Max Sloat, 6'3", 220, and Ben Johnson, he's 6'1", 220. So like, I think Duke's first line of midfield is going to be a problem for a lot of college defenses this year, so that's going to be interesting to see that. But last week, I pretty much said that they're going to get knocked out of the top 20. Again, we'll see if when they play a formidable opponent, but offensively, they got some weapons.
Pound sign Rat was right. Pound sign Rat
was right. Pound sign Rat was
right. You take away their whole starting attack, and all of a sudden the team is just whipping the ball around. Everybody's touching it. Tons of assisted goals.
Yep.
Very, very fun to watch them play, but also Bellarmine might be awful. So, we'll find out, right? We'll find out. So before we look ahead to this week's game and talk about what's going on and some bets and some storylines, another thing that you pointed out to me that I do find it's an interesting topic is number 1 at University of Maryland is in the crease, is in the cage. A number donned by Joe Walters and Matt Rambo and Jared Bernhardt. Now we saw it move to the defensive side of the field, right, with Makar, and I think was it Ajax that wore it.
Yeah.
And now it's the goalie. Are we doing too much with number 1? Is it like what do we is it? Can it be a goalie? Is the ghost of Joe Walters rolling over in his grave?
Yeah, I mean, look, the McEnany kid, he's very good. He's a veteran. He's won a national championship. He's proven between the pipes. I get all that. He's good. He's very good goalie. But the number 1 is, for me, it's just like synonymous with the Joe Walters, Bernhardt's was now like it's just I feel like you started the trend. It goes on Ogai. It needs to go on Ogai, Rambo. We all know those names. What's next? Are we going to give it to a face-off guy next year? Like, I just don't think I just don't think you give it. And the Terps are probably going to attack me. Bring it. I don't give a shit. But like, that number needs to go to an offensive player, in my opinion. Ajax, Makar, like, obviously those guys are well deserved. They're the best defensemen that come through there. 2 of the best defensemen ever come through Maryland. But like, yet the number 1, once you start like dishing it out, like you think Cuse is going to give the 22 to a faceoff guy or a goalie? Like 22 should be retired, obviously, to the pals. But I'm not a big fan of the passing the number out. I just, I feel like
that. Me too. I think it you end up getting in your own way. We saw this happen at Cuse. So here I got some insight on this at Cuse. They start doing this thing, right? 22, we got to give it to the best guy. First off, this is where Maryland's doing it differently. They at least are giving it to like an established player. Cuse went on this streak for a while where they were giving it to freshmen to help recruit them. So like you have Kevin Rice wearing number 2 there, who is the best player on your team as a sophomore. And then you give number 22 to Jordan Evans, who's the top recruit in the country coming in. You piss off K Rice. And then Jordan Evans like doesn't pan out, and you're just putting so much pressure on people to be something other than themselves. Like, what if this guy likes their number? I just don't think it's a good idea. So in that sense, obviously, like Joey Spallina steps in and wears it, and like he's a rare case. This kid seems like he can handle it. Like it's just but Jojo Marasco like maybe didn't have the Casey Powell career, but he led a Final Four run as a senior. Like again. We know JoJo, just type of personality, like can handle it. But I just think it's a lot to put on guys to say, like, here's the number. You now have to be Joe Walters, or you now have to be, Gary Gate. Like, go get him. I don't like that. I don't think it's a smart tactic. I get it for recruiting, but you're Syracuse, you're Maryland. Like, you don't really need any more help in recruiting. Just show them all your trophies and, like, they'll be fine.
Yeah. It's just like you give a goalie the number one. He's a veteran. He knows how to. Obviously, he's solid. But like, what happens when you go? Or Syracuse comes to town, you get shelled and you yank him. Like, you get his number one just going to stay on the sideline. Like, and then say like the guy behind him comes in and has 30 saves, and you can't bring him back in.
It's just a weird move. It's a weird move.
I don't like it.
Let guys be whatever number they want to be.
Yeah, and Q's thing, man. Like, it's the number 22. When I hear the number 22, I just, the Gates, like, I just, like, I don't know. I just think that
put it in the rafters. Put it in the rafters. And I mean, you could do that with number one. And I get it. Again, they had a streak of guys where it worked. They did. Yeah. I mean, I have no idea who wore it, like, in between Walters and Rambo. But, like, then it got to Rambo, and then it was awesome. And then, Jared Bernhardt was awesome. Like, so there's some proof of concept there. I just think you're doing too much. Give him a goalie number. Like, let him wear whatever number the kid wants to wear. Don't put this pressure on him that you now have to be the star player that leads us to the glory land because you're now number one. Like, I think it ends up becoming more trouble than it's worth, and it is weird. It's weird to see a goalie wear it. It would be weirder to see a faceoff guy wear it, but that's where I stand.
I didn't play at University of Maryland, so I have no say in it, but I think I don't like it. So that's it.
Okay. And then what happens is these guys get in the pros, and they all play for the Whip Snakes, and it's like, well, fuck, which one of us gets to wear number one now? Like, it's just like, it's not fair. So, okay. Let's look ahead, right? College lacrosse week 2. So, coming up next week, obviously sixes. So we'll do a full dive in, right, to PLL sixes on next week's episode. We can get to that. Week 2 of college lacrosse, I think a more interesting slate of games, right? We got Towson and Hopkins Tuesday night, Baltimore rivalry on Saturday. Cuse plays Vermont, Michigan UNC is going to be an interesting one. Maryland plays Loyola, and then I think we have circled our game of the week, Georgetown Hopkins. What are you looking for in week 2?
Yeah, week 2. I mean, the Hopkins Towson game will be interesting to watch. That's always, that's a rivalry for them. And I think that game's gonna be closer than you think. I'll be interested to see the result of that one. Again, like, Syracuse plays Vermont. That's I think Syracuse is obviously gonna handle Vermont. But yeah, I think that Hopkins Towson game is gonna be a fun one to watch. Maryland Loyola, that's another in-state rivalry, obviously. I don't know. Towson Hopkins is my game of the week. I think that's going to be closer than you think. It's a night game, so I think that's going to be a really fun game to watch on that. Like I said, Hopkins long stick midi play and short stick middies. It's an issue. If you watch that Denver game, how quickly they slide to their short stick midfielders and poles, that's an issue. They got to figure that out, and very slow recoveries. Obviously, it was the first game, but like, Denver hit some pipes. Goalie made some huge saves on the doorsteps. That is going to be an area of focus for them moving forward, especially into this game. And I'm sure Coach Nadalin is obviously great player and great defensive mind. He's definitely going to key in on that, on the short sticks and how much they slide. And that's going to be a point of emphasis, I'm sure, heading into that one. But that's going to be a good game. I think that's going to be closer than you think, for sure.
So I agree. And, Towson's tough. Those Baltimore games are always, and like Tuesday night games are always hard too. Like, it's quick turnaround. It's an upset watch type of game. Just the fact that it is on a Tuesday. Army UMass, they play, feels like every year, going back to, the early 90s when you played, that Army UMass is always a good game. So I think that's like one, again, I don't know what the streaming situation is, but if I have a chance to watch that, I'd love to see them play. Thoughts and prayers. We need to do a thoughts and prayers to the Jacksonville Dolphins. They play Duke. Their combined score after week 2 might be 45-8. Like, they just had to go to the Dome, get absolutely shelled by Syracuse. Oh, okay, bounce back week. Who do we play? Oh, Duke. They scored 26 goals against Bellarmine in week 1. Gosh, that program, Hartsey, like we obviously Galloway's a guy we both have a ton of respect for. They had like a moment, right, where it was like kind of what you thought he might do down there. And I know this was a few years ago where it seemed like they were winning games and they were knocking it. And just it feels like, I don't know, if something's got to give there. They did not look good. It'll be interesting to see if they can bounce back and like be competitive with Duke, but it's a tall ask. And if you're in that locker room and you just gave up 30 goals to Syracuse and now you're looking and you got to go play Duke, like that's not going to be fun. I don't envy them. Look, I questioned Maryland. Like I thought that win over Richmond was really impressive. They came out early in the game and just again like played slow, like classic Maryland style, but they just wore Richmond down. And that game was not as close as the score. Richmond scored a bunch of goals in the fourth quarter. Maryland was really dominant. I love my Hounds. We were up 4-1 on Georgetown, and I thought, oh, here they go again, just when everybody thinks they're going to be terrible. But they couldn't win a face-off, Kyle. And they same sort of thing. Like as that game went, they just got worn down. So I think that's going to be another tough one for them playing Maryland. Like I just don't know if Loyola's got the horsepower to keep up with a team like the Terps. For me, the game of the week is North Carolina, Michigan. So
top 20s.
Michigan, a program that's been on the rise, obviously. I'm picking on Jake Richard and Marquette. I think they'll be better. Like, again, week 1, it is what it is. Like, they scored 1 goal. They obviously came out and had a tough day. There's a million reasons that can happen. Like, they're going to get better. They have talented players. He's a really good coach. I fully expect Marquette to be better than that. But that's also Michigan has kind of become a well-oiled machine. Like, another program now that's recruiting really good players, consistent coaching, consistently winning games in May. Like they are established. And UNC, we've both doubted them. What are you ever going to come back into relevance? Obviously, they got the kid Owen Duffy, who's probably one of the best players in the country. Kid's an absolute stud. That game to me is going to be very telling. I think what you're going to get from Michigan. They're going to be good. Are they going to be Syracuse? No, I don't think they're quite that talented, but clearly they're a problem. They're well coached. They're going to be good. What's UNC going to look like? Are you going to come out and compete and play them to a tight game or beat them? Or are you just not, are you going to tell us early that here we go again, you're going to give up 18 goals and, lose by 5 and it's just going to be another year. So that's the game. If I have to purchase a stream this week, that's probably the one that that I'm going to spend my hard-earned $8.99 to watch, because I just think that's going to be these early season games. Like you can't really learn a lot in any of them to a certain extent. That one, I think we might be able to learn something about UNC more than anybody else is how you compete with Michigan in this early season matchup. So that's the one I'm most looking forward to.
Yeah, it's like UNC. We'll see what they look like, but is Owen Duffy going to have 80 plus points and they're not going to make the tournament again? Like that'll be interesting to see how they come out of that. That's their first game of the season, obviously. And then the other one that'll be interesting to watch is Colgate UVA, right? UVA's offense is going to look a lot different. They're handing the keys to Millen. Ben Ware, my top LSM pick. It'll be interesting how they look, because obviously Millen is more than capable of taking over that offense, but losing Connor Schellenberger, Cormier, like it's going to be interesting to see what that offense looks like. I think he's going to take over the offense in a positive way.
Do you think? I think people underestimate sometimes how hard it is becoming the number one ball carrying player. Like we talked about it last week a little bit with Cav. Like, talk me through that. Like what he was awesome last year as a freshman. But what is the difference when you're getting covered by Sean Light versus somebody else, in these big games? How big of a difference do you think that can make in terms of a player's production?
It makes I think it's a huge difference. I mean, last year what a scenario to walk into, right? You got Connor Schellenberger, one of the best attackmen in college lacrosse, and he came out of the box a little bit, short sticks, and he got confidence early, but yeah, he dominated last year. And then like when he was at McDonough, I mean, he was the guy, right? He's the ball carrier. He initiated everything. So he's not, I think he's pumped for that. Like he was waiting. He knew that was coming, right? Like he saw the guys in front of him graduating. He's like, I'm getting the keys next year. And I think it's something he's actually looking forward to. The kid's a hell of a competitor. I know his dad, like the kids are psycho competitors. So I think it's going to be, I think he's going to be really interesting to watch, but he's going to be just.
Is his dad competitive?
Very.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because the only time I ever see is like when they're his club teams are getting in fights on the sideline with coaches from Long Island.
Yeah, that shows you he's competitive. He's trying to fight people over club lacrosse.
Yeah, that's an issue. We can do a whole nother episode on that and how important it is to win.
We'll do a club lacrosse issue. We'll do like a PLL bye week or something.
Issue. Yeah, we'll do. Yeah, there's probably plenty to talk about there. We might have to save that for the fall when there's not lacrosse going on, and we can just dive in and dissect like how important is it for Team 91 Maryland to beat the Long Island Clams at 2:30 in the third game of the day on a Saturday at Farmingdale State College? Because it seems pretty damn important if you tune in. So, all right, Hartsey. Well, I think we kind of got through the slate there. If there's anything else before I got, one kind of thing to end it with here, but anything else in college lacrosse that we should dig into before next week?
No, I think, the one thing I forgot to mention, Hopkins has pretty much 2 games this week, Tuesday, Towson night game, and then they played Georgetown Saturday. And I have that as a big game. Two huge games. So I think, Hopkins got a tough week this week, but I think they're up to the task.
Hopkins might be for real. Yeah. If Hopkins comes out of this week 2-0.
Short stick D-middies, it looks like an issue right now. So we'll see what happens.
So why? What did you see that tells you that?
They got bullied at times. They slide extremely early to their short sticks. They were even sliding extremely early to some long sticks up top. Which like if you're sliding to poles, I don't know why you would slide to poles early, but just some dodges like Denver dodging down the alley, like guys that
because teams slide, right? Threats. Like we saw that with Notre Dame for all those years where you're sliding early, but you're not seeing that as like this is our defensive strategy. You're seeing that as like we can't win matchups.
Seeing it as that, but like as a defenseman, you're sliding. You just got to like look out, evaluate the on-ball defense. Does it warrant a slide? Can I show a little bit, get back? It was just like they were just committing to sliding to short sticks, which shows you like KYP, like know your personnel. If they're in practice, these guys are getting beat. Hey, Bob's up top with the ball. I got to slide. I got to be ready to go here. Like,
do you think the shade of blue that Hopkins wears plays into their just lack of toughness and team defense?
No, I do not. Jamison Kester, I think, is a phenomenal defensive coordinator. It's just, you lose some guys. I think they lost a lot of guys. They lost a lot of guys last year. So they're just trying to probably figure it out. Maybe there's some other guys are going to bump up there, but to me, short stick D-middies and their LSM play, it worried me a little bit. So
I think it matters. I think if you're a high school kid and you want to wear like that baby blue with a little bird on the helmet, you're probably the type of kid who likes to shoot step back threes in basketball. You're probably the type of kid who likes to, stand on the left pipe and catch it and fake 8 times and score. But like, are you the type of kid who picks up 8 GBs, has 0 cause turnovers, 0 points, 0 assists, and then stays after and cleans up trash off the, high school field? I don't know. I don't know if that kid's going to Hopkins. So something to keep an eye on. Just, something to keep an eye on. What type?
It's early. It's early, everybody. It's early. So, it's early.
All right. So, look, I talked about it in the beginning. We got some feedback that our take on the Ivy League players was terrible. I went on ChatGPT and let's find out if they could, if ChatGPT could successfully roast us the way that they roasted you week 1. There wasn't enough information on there. So I asked directly for negative feedback and it said that it couldn't find any available on the internet. So that's on you, the listeners. We want to hear it. We want to hear the good, the bad. Get in the comments. Make sure that next week when I ask ChatGPT, how do I do better at my job here, that it has some feedback for me, or else how am I supposed to learn? So not enough commenting, but it did have some thoughts. So let's dive in. Over the Head podcast with Kyle Hartzell and Scott Ratliff. Oh, you mean the podcast where 2 lacrosse bros try to convince the world that their locker room wisdom is actually deep life advice? These guys have the combined charisma of a pregame huddle speech that's gone 5 minutes too long. If you've ever wondered what happens when two guys who peaked in college decide they're podcasters, well, here's your answer.
That's great. I love
Not bad. Not bad. Well, housekeeping. We talked about it next week. We will do a full Sixes preview. I know we touched on it briefly, but probably hadn't done our homework enough. So Sixes starts a week from Tuesday. So, we'll record next Sunday and dive in, and you can listen to that as PLL Sixes starts, which will be awesome. I touched on it, but we're trying to get this thing going. Was able to get a microphone and a background this week. So hopefully I sound a little bit more bearable, but liking and subscribing and commenting, even if it's to tell us, how terrible our takes are, that's all going to help us to be able to keep doing this and get better. So please take some time and do that. And shout out to John Miller, Jay Mills, our producer. Jay Mills is helping making this happen and get the content out on social media and doing a wonderful job. He got me from, look at
you now. Look at you now.
It took him 1 week. So thank you to Jay Mills. You got anything else for the people, Kyle, or are we all good here?
I got nothing. We're going to have questions from the followers on Instagram. We'll be doing that next week. So I'll be asking you guys to drop your questions on a story or something. We'll get some questions from our listeners. But yeah, other than that, episode 2, it's a wrap.
Peace.